Hello, everyone. This is Thomas Pepin NHL Talk. I'm Thomas Pepin, and let's talk about the NHL. So, just a moment to make sure everything's good here. Okay, and all right. So, this is part 6 of the 8-part series I'm doing on evaluating teams' cap management. This is covering the Metropolitan Division. For the second half of teams. So yesterday we covered the Carolina Hurricanes, the New Jersey Devils. Who else was it? Columbus Blue Jackets and Philadelphia Flyers. And then today we're going to be covering the New York Rangers, New York Islanders, Washington Capitals, and Pittsburgh Penguins. So, as with the previous streams, basically the structure is sorry, one sec. I start with overall cap position, then break down by forwards, defense, and goalies. Talk about the major contracts, the flexibility for each of those types of players. So forwards, defense, goalies, and then give an overall grade based on flexibility contracts and if the team's competitive. So again, we're starting here with Pittsburgh. Their current cap hit is 83.925 million. GM is Ron Hextall. And we'll start with the forwards. So there's Sidney Crosby making 8.7 million per 3 years remaining on a 12-year contract. And last year, his points were 84, 31 goals in 69 games, 62 points, 24 goals in 55 games, 47 points, 41 games, and 100 points with 35 goals in 79 games. So, as everybody knows, Crosby is one of the best players. So, obviously not surprised by the stats. So, his average goals would probably be around 30 something, it looks like, and approximately just over a point per game or so, depending on the year. So, yeah. So, anyways, 8.7 million at this point is an absolute steal. Back in 2013-14, which is when this started, I mean, it was probably expensive at the time, but I can't recall. It's been almost 10 years. So, in any case, very good contract now. It's the thing about having those 12-year contracts, the 10-year contracts, which, if I'm not mistaken, I don't think you can even do 10 years anymore. I think the max is 8, if I'm not mistaken. But in any case, that's where at the beginning it could be expensive, at the end it could be really cheap. Whereas with 8 years, if it's expensive at the beginning, it's still going to be relatively expensive at the end, assuming the cap doesn't increase any dramatic amount. Which, I mean, given recent years, I don't know if it doesn't seem likely that it's going to increase by any substantial amount in an 8-year time frame to make it so the contract is less expensive. So Um, anyways, so kind of lucked out there, I guess, in Pittsburgh in that they could sign a guy long term. So the value is great now, whereas previously it might have been expensive. So, anyways, next up is Malkin, just re signed. So 4 years remaining on a 4 year contract. And last year, 42 points, 20 goals in 41 games, 28 points in 33, 74 with 25 goals in 55 games, and then 72 with 21 goals in 68. So he's had injury problems as of late, so that's unfortunate for the team. But um, if he's healthy, probably 30 goals or just shy of it, and typically over a point per game. So great performance. Now he was just signed, like I said, cap hit only of 6.1 million. Um, the problem is that it expires when he's 40 and he's had injury problems. So um, that's where I don't know the fine details of how it works when somebody retires, but um, yeah, 6.1 million cap hit while he's there is great. If he plays through all that, I mean, if his performance goes down, then that's where still the value is probably going to be good. But I mean, it would have to drop dramatically for that to be a bad contract. So in any case, it's a good contract, assuming he's healthy. But you can use the LTIR and stuff, so it's not overly critical, even if he is healthy. So good value contract. I wouldn't have done 4 years, given that he's 36 as it is, but um, I mean, it's not the end of the world. And you know what? I'm gonna take a look because I've had this question about what happens if somebody retires. So what happens with the contract? So just a second, I'm gonna try to have a look. Huh. Um, so I'm getting different answers from different sources. So just bear with me still here. Okay, so one thing I'm reading here is the only way to end a player's contract early is to buy it out or have the player retire. And even then, there will only be salary cap relief if the contract took effect prior to a player turning 35. So, based on that, it looks like the cap hit would remain in his case because it was signed. Um, when's his birthday? See, these are the funny details that I mean I'm not well versed in. So, uh, prior to a player turning 35. He was 35 when the contract was signed. So then that means it should still be on the books if he does retire. So, anyways, so in that case, I think it's a bad contract to sign for that duration, but maybe he's going to play till he's 40. It's hard to say. So, in any case, I don't think it's the contract, even with that potentially taking place. But yeah, so inexpensive, assuming he plays and assuming he is somewhere near his normal performance, or even at a fraction of it, it would still be probably a good contract. So, anyways, next up, Jake Gensel, 2 years, 6 million per, remaining on a 5-year contract. Another stud of a player, 84 points, 40 goals in 76 games, 57, 23 goals in 56 games, 43, 20 goals in 39 games, 76 points, 40 goals in 82 games. So probably average 30 to 35 goals a year. And approximately a point per game. So really good performance. Was signed in 2018, which would have been after one decent year, actually 2 decent years. So in that case, and he was a 3rd round pick, not that great of pedigree in terms of where he played before. So that's where 6 million at the time, that's a bit of a gamble. The fact that it's 5 years is pretty good because it's not forever. And it pays off really well now. So, anyways, at the time, I think it would have been risky to pay that much for that player, but oh wait. So, okay, I stand corrected. So in the playoffs, his first year in the playoffs, 21 points in 25 games, second playoffs, 21 points in 12 games. So, yeah, given that, 6 million's fine because he was clutch in important times. So, yeah, even if your performance is decent as it was during the regular season, to have that performance in the playoffs, you could project that he'd be really good. So yeah, I take that back. 6 million, 5 years is a good idea. Longer term or higher price would both be risky. So in this case, actually, it's a good contract considering his history. So, so that's good. Jason Zucker, 5.125. I think that means he was extended. Just give me a second here. No, sorry, wrong. I was looking at the wrong one there. So 5.5, 1 year remaining of a 5-year contract. Last year, 17 points in 41 games, 18 in 38, 41 in 60, and then 42 with 21 goals in 81. So looks like his performance has been slipping. He's off to a good start this year, but who's to say he'll keep it up? So, anyways, so it was signed in 2018 by the Wild, so not against the management in Pittsburgh, and that was 2018. So after his best year. So 5.5 million after his best year is fair for Pittsburgh to pick it up. At the price is reasonable. I mean, so his best year was 33 goals, 64 points in 82 games, which is very good. Now, they picked him up after a dip the next year, still around, 21 goals and then half a point per game, basically. So, yeah, I guess picking up the contract at that price is reasonable given the performance. Um, so I'd say to round out the roster, good player. I mean, maybe slightly too high in price. Um, how did they get him? They traded away Galchenyuk, Addison, and a first round pick. And that was early for the trade deadline, basically. So, I mean, that's a steep price first round pick for that at that contract. So, anyways, it's not the worst pickup because it's inexpensive, but not the best. So, uh, and they picked him up. It was in 2020, I think I saw. Yeah, so February 2020, which would have been with 3 years. So, in that case, it's like signing a guy for 3 years in a sense. So, not bad, still not good from what they gave up, but yeah, not the worst in the world to have there. Um, all right, Brian Rust, 5.125 per 6 years remaining on a 6-year contract. Last year, 58 points, 24 goals, 60 games, 42, 22 goals, 56 games, 56, 27 in 55 games, 35 points in 72 games. So 20 some odd goals, trending upwards, approximately a point per game. It was signed in the summer after back-to-back years of basically a point per game. Well, 3 years in a row of a point per game, 20 some odd goals. So, um, not the best pedigree, third round pick, but good track record, I guess. So, anyways, 5.125 is, I'd say, a great contract for him. And it's probably going to be a steal in the end, given how well he's done as of late. So, I'd say a really good contract there. And then last forward, I believe, that I'll touch on is Ricard Raquel. 5 million per 6 years remaining on a 6-year contract. Last year, 41 points in 70 games, with 20 goals, 28 points in 52, 42 in 65, 43 in 69. So, under point per game, almost half a point per game. Yeah, and was signed after a decent year last year, an off year the year before, actually for the 3 years prior, and then he had 30 some odd goals in a couple years earlier and almost a point per game. So, first round pick. So good pedigree, played World Juniors. So basically, he's been up and down. 6 years at 5 million is not bad. Expires when he's 35, so good timing for that. Yeah, I'd say 5 million. I don't know. With the dip in his performance, it's tough to say, but I mean, it's not a massive overpay, maybe a slight overpay, maybe slightly too long in contract, given that he's kind of fluctuated in his performance, but I mean, not bad. Um, so not a bad contract, but not ideal for what I would look for. So their core is, I think it's 6 years is the most. Yeah, so between 1 and 6 years, mostly 3 and 6 uh, for their core. So some flexibility. I don't like the fact that Raquel is 6 years. Rust is great at 6. Um, Everyone else at their term, Malkin maybe too long, but not the worst. So um, I'd say pretty good up front, just not perfect. But still lots of space given how low some of those contracts are. So I'd say generally pretty good for the forwards. On defense, they have Jeff Petrie, 6.25, 3 years remaining on a 4-year contract. Last year, 27 points in 68 games, 42 and 55, really good. 40 and 71, 46 and 82. So around a 40-point defenseman, which is quite good. Was signed in Montreal 2020. So after 3 straight years of 40 points. So 6.25, given that performance, is actually quite good. So, I mean, you contrast it with some other defense. Who was it we looked at yesterday? Hamilton, making, I think it was 9 million, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, 9 million. Hamilton's best year is 50 points in 81 games. 50 points in 81 games versus best for Petrie of 46 and 82. 6.25 versus 9 million. I mean, I'd say great contract, especially in comparison. Um, and it expires when he is 37. So maybe a bit late, but so maybe it might not be that great towards like maybe in the last year, but it's pretty darn close. So in any case, they're getting good value at the moment, or you would expect good value at the moment. So I'd say great contract pickup. Good job for Pittsburgh. Um, okay, Chris Letang, 6.1 per, 6 years remaining on a 6-year contract. So that was just this last off season. Last year, 68 points, 78 games, very good. 45 and 55, 44 and 61, 56 and 65. Like stud of a defenseman at 6.1. Like the problem is it expires when he's 41. Is he going to play till he's 41? He's had injury problems most years. I mean, he's assuming he's healthy for the most part, assuming he can play out his contract, then it's great. But the problem is, it's the same story like the Malkin one. Given that it's apparently supposed to stay on the books if they retire, given when it was signed. Wait. So he was born April, and it was in July. It was signed. So he was 35. So then, yeah, so it's the same thing. You'd have to be, I think what I saw was under 35. So yeah, that's where it's a gamble. It's tough. You're probably going to get good value while he's there. So, I mean, same thing with Malkin. Probably not bad, but too long, kind of risky, I guess. Um, Next up, Dumoulin, 4.1 million per 1 year remaining on a 6-year contract. Last year, 18.76 games, 14 and 41, 8 in 28, 23 and 76. So not that great of performance. 4.1 was signed 2017 after 2 mediocre years. So don't like the contract. Second round pick. Uh Played in the World Juniors, so decent pedigree. So I mean, if you think he's going to trend upwards, it's not that bad. But yeah, so I'd say it's fine at the time that it was made. Just isn't panning out where you're getting great value. Just and it's not bad value either. It's just not the best. So an okay contract, I guess, in the end there. Marcus Pedersen, 4.025 per 3 years remaining on a 5-year contract. Last year, 19 points, 72 games, 9 points in 47, 22 in 69, 19 in 57. So similar performance to Dumoulin. Was signed in 2020 after, again, 2 kind of mediocre years. So same story, not a bad contract. He play World? Yeah, he played World Juniors. So, I mean, a second round pick, decent pedigree. So, again, you kind of hope he's trending upwards, but it doesn't look that great um, versus his dollar, or that great of performance versus his dollar. So his cap hit to the team. So, again, not a bad contract, not really much he could have done differently. So the range is 3 to 6 years of their core. Uh, so decent flexibility. Might get stuck with Letang's contract. So it's not. I mean, I'd say good contracts if people play, but maybe not if they don't. Uh, so again, decent flexibility, not bad, not good either. But pretty inexpensive given some of the performance if you kind of average it out over the players. So, yeah, so not bad. Tristan Jari in net, 3.5 per 1 year remaining on a 3-year contract. Last year, 919 save percentage in 58 games, 909 in 39, and 921 in 33. So he struggled in the playoffs. But I have a feeling he's going to bounce back and probably do well, assuming they make the playoffs this year. Uh, Good pedigree. I believe he played. No, so I thought he played. So it was in the Junior Super Series. Um, so I guess not quite the best of pedigree, but decent second round pick. And the contract was signed 2020 after basically 2 years, maybe average of like 30 games, 908, 921 save percentage. So, um, not the best track record, not bad. Or sorry, good track record for what he played, but not enough of it is what I meant. So, um, and not the best of pedigree, not the worst. So it was smart 3 years at 3.5 because you don't know how he's going to pan out. So I'd say that was a good contract, a good 1A, 1B kind of goalie. So I'd say good job there because it wasn't enough good performance to sign him long term and not enough pedigree to do it. So I'd say really smart contract there. So really good job. So that's it for them. Altogether, I would say, see, it's tough with the expiring, uh, that the contracts expire when some of these guys are old. So with Letang and Malkin, inexpensive contracts, but that's the problem, uh, if they retire and stuff. So I don't know. Seems a bit risky to me, but it's a balance because the dollar figure is not that much. So, um, yeah, I'd say mostly good. I mean, it's a competitive team. They could win the Stanley Cup. Uh, I, um, yeah, I have a strong positive opinion of them. So, um, yeah, I think I picked them to go first in the division. Yeah. So I don't know. Great this year, probably great next year. It's just after that is where maybe it's not going to be as good. So, um, so since they're going for a cup, uh, I'd say probably B plus. Um, yeah, I mean, you got to do what you got to do, and a lot of the contracts are pretty decent. So, yeah, I'll say B plus for Pittsburgh. And I guess today, because I've gone by my lowest prediction to highest, so I guess I'm going reverse today. Uh, as I've mentioned before, so this I do this completely on the fly, not really much prep, so except for knowing the subject. So that's where I guess in the end we get a different flow, different times. So um, yeah, so we'll go in best to worst order for my predictions. So I guess next up is Washington. Washington's cap hit is 90.403 million. So over the cap using their LTIR. So GM is Brian McClellan. So we'll start with the forwards. Ovechkin, 9.5 per, 4 years remaining on a 5-year contract. I mean, one of the league's best, obviously. So not too much to say. 90 points, 50 goals, 77 games, 24 goals in 45 games, 67 points, 48 goals, 68 games, 89 points, 51 goals, 81 games. So one of the highest scoring players out there. Could get close or might beat Gretzky's record for goals or career goals, I should say. Man, what a player. So this was signed 2021, which means it expires when he's 41. So it's the same story. Is he going to play till he's 41? I mean, he's been healthy. hasn't missed much time in his career. So um, he'll probably play it out. 9.5 cap hit for his goals is very good. Um, if if he can continue to produce those goals for that duration. So it's tough to say if he will in fact do it, but excuse me. Yeah, it's the same kind of seems risky to me given that he might not play to the end, but he probably will in this case where because he's been healthy, whereas with like a Malkin or Letang, they both have had injury problems. Uh, so maybe I would have tried to shorten it, but maybe there's information I don't know. Maybe he is planning to play that long. So I guess we'll see. So not a bad contract. I would just be concerned that he'd retire and the cap hit would remain there. So um, next up, Kuznetsov, 7.8 per 3 years remaining on an 8-year contract. Last year, 78 points, 24 goals in 79 games, 29 points, 41 games, 52 in 63, 72 with 21 goals in 76. So 20 some odd goal scorer, about a point per game. So good player. Was signed in 2017 after one mediocre year and 2 good years. So first round pick, played World Juniors, played well there. So great pedigree. Locked up long term at 7.8. I'd say good contract. Maybe slightly pricey. Maybe you would have wanted like 7 point something, 3, 5, but it's close enough. So I'd say good contract and it's panned out. So I'd say good job there. Oshie, 5.75 per 3 remaining on an 8-year contract. Last year, 25 points in 44 games, 43 and 22. So, sorry, 43 points, 22 goals in 53, 49, 26 goals in 69, 54, 25 goals in 69. 20 goal scorer, approximately, no, just under or a little bit under a point per game. He's been really good in the playoffs. 68 points, 34 goals in 102 playoff games in his career. So really good performance there. Was signed 2017 after a few decent years. That was his best year when he was signed. So it's tough because if it's his best year, you're hoping much more of the same. But and I mean, it's been close enough for the rest of his seasons. But he basically hit his peak. It looks like in that best year, and then kind of has gone down since. Not by much, but a little bit. So at 5.75, I'd say it's close enough. 20 some odd goals a year, and somewhat. I mean, not too far from a point per game. I'd say that's good enough value. So decent contract there. And he's a right winger, which is hard to find. So I'd say that's good then. Anthony Mantha, 5.7 per 2 years remaining on a 4-year contract. Last year, 23 points in 37 games, 29 in 56, 38 and 43, and 48 with 25 goals in 67. So looks like a 15 to 20 goal scorer, under a point per game. Was signed in 2020 after 2 decent years, and actually 3 decent years, I'd say. Was a first round pick, good pedigree, played World Juniors. Um, so you'd think that he's trending 5.7, only 4 years. I'd say that's a smart contract, and funny enough, was done by Yzerman, which has a good track record in my opinion. Um, so I'd say smart contract, not a bad contract to pick up. Um, it was picked up 2021. Yeah, it looks like. Um, yeah, what did they give up for him? Panic, a first, a second, and Verana. First round pick for that contract. I don't know. So not bad. Good flexibility. So, but maybe a bit steep for what they picked him up for. Then they have a lot of injuries at the moment. We've got Tom Wilson, 5.167 per, 2 years remaining on a 6-year contract. Last year, 52 points, 24 goals in 78 games, 33 points in 47, 44 with 21 goals in 68, 40, 22 goals in 63. So he is a pest and produces. So a good guy, I've heard, to have in your locker room. Was a first round pick. Didn't play in the World Juniors, but has good pedigree anyways. Was signed in 2018 after a decent year and then a few kind of mediocre years. So 5.167. It's a bit steep for when they got him because his track record wasn't that great at the time of the signing. So I think it's an overpay at the time of the signing. Turns out that it's a great contract because of 20 some odd goals and not too far from a point per game. So, I mean, it's like I said, it panned out. I'd say not a good enough track record to justify 6 years at that dollar figure. I would have probably aimed for maybe 4 at a lower price, but again, not the worst contract. I'd just say not the best either. Backstrom, Nicholas Backstrom, 9.2 per, 3 years remaining on a 5-year contract. Last year, 31 points, 47 games, 53 and 55, 54 and 61, 74 with 22 goals and 80. Somewhere around a 20 goal scorer, around a point per game too. Was signed in 2020. After all of his good years. Yeah, 20 goals and a point per game, in my opinion, is not worth 9.2. Or sorry, it's in the market it is. Is it what I would pay? No. So and it expires when he's 37, which is also a bit old. So I don't like it's not a contract I would do. It's one of those, the market says it's fine, but I wouldn't do that contract. So I don't really like that one, but it's not the worst. Then defense, we have John Carlson at 8 million per 4 years remaining on an 8-year contract. Last year, 71 points in 78 games, 44 and 52, 75 and 69, 70 and 80. It was signed in 2018. After one really good year, two really good years, and a few decent years. 2018, he had a good playoff 1 year, 12 points in 12 games. And then the year he got the contract was 20 points in 24 games. So, I mean, yeah, the value turns out being great. He's a point per game as a defenseman, which is very, very good and very hard to find. So this one, I'd say, is up in the Makar kind of range of where you should be, I'd be willing to pay a lot to keep him. So uh, just for interest's sake, let's contrast it with Makar's performance. So Makar's making 9 million per, and he had 86 points, 28 goals in 77 games last year. He's been basically a point per game and was a stud in the playoffs last year. So 8 million at a point per game versus 9 million at over a point per game, or approximately a point per game. Makar's younger and is clearly trending upwards. Whereas Carlson, the contract expires when he is 36. So, anyways, basically a player getting paid in his prime with prime performance, one of the best defensemen in the league. 8 million is I'd say it's the one of the few contracts that I would go for a defenseman where they're getting paid that high. So I'd say that's a great contract, even with my aversion to paying defensemen that kind of money. So if I had that on my books, I'd be perfectly happy because that's really good. And 8 years when it was signed. And like I said, it expires when he's 36. So towards a bit old. I mean, 1 year probably longer than I would have liked, but I mean, I'd say great contract. That's really good to have. And last defenseman we'll touch on is Dmitry Orlov, 5.1 per, 1 year remaining on a 6-year contract. Last year, 35 points, 76 games, 22 and 51, 27 and 69, and 29 in 82. So a decent defenseman. Was signed in 2017 after 2 good years, I'd say. His performance has been approximately the same. So 5.1, I'd say that's probably just about right. That's what I'd want. Was signed for 6 years when he was 25, I think. So, and good pedigree. 6 years. I mean, maybe this is one of those you would have gone for 8 given his pedigree and performance, but 6 years is not it's long enough, so I'd say it's a good contract. Just maybe could have done longer. Um, I guess that one's to taste, but yeah, so that's good. Defense, they only have 1 year on all of them, basically, and then 4 on Carlson. So lots of flexibility. Have the important one locked up, and then the rest, I guess, they're gonna figure out what they're gonna do. Um, so great flexibility. Orlov, maybe, hopefully they can re-sign at a reasonable amount, and then I guess kind of go from there. So I'd say in great shape in general for their defense. They just signed Kemper, their goalie, this past offseason, 5.25 per 5 years remaining of a 5 year contract. So this guy I find difficult. So I'm not that big on him. I don't know if he's. I mean, so what I was going to say is if he's the kind of goalie you can win a cup with, but he won a cup. So he just didn't look that great in the playoffs. And I mean, he's had stellar stats in the regular season. Um, Not the best of pedigree. I mean, a 6th round pick. Uh, so I don't know. I'm not that big on him. I have a feeling that he's not. He was just on a powerhouse team and just needed to be good enough. So, uh, is Washington good enough to win the cup with him in net? I'd say not quite. I'd say they have a chance, but not quite. Um, so, anyways, for his performance, his track record, 5.25 per is reasonable. It expires when he's 37, which is maybe slightly old, but not crazy old for a goalie. So it's fine. The dollar figure's perfectly fine for a starter. With his track record is fine. I wouldn't want him as my goalie. Uh, but other people are big on him. So I'm probably the odd man out here. But yeah, so great contract. I mean, if you believe strongly in him, but I don't. So, but nonetheless, still a good contract for a starter. I'd say it's great. Just I wouldn't want him as my starter. Sorry to Kemper. Not that you're probably going to see this, but whatever. Anyways, so altogether for Washington, I mean, lots of flexibility. Everybody that should be signed is. They're kind of in the middle of their contracts with everybody, all kind of in the middle of their prime as well, excluding Ovechkin, which is kind of getting towards the end, but still performing well. So, um, lots of flexibility, like tons. Uh, what they're spending for what they're getting is great. Um, the only contract I dislike is the Backstrom one, and then Ovechkin's is slightly long, but probably fine. So I'd say really good. Um, Competitive team, could win a Stanley Cup. I don't think they will, but they're close enough. Um, just given the flexibility, I'd give them somewhere in the A's. So I'd say A minus. It's really close to being um, good. So yeah, we'll say A minus for Washington. Uh, yeah, to contrast with Pittsburgh, it's Pittsburgh. The problem is the contract staying on the books when if they retire. So here, it seems unlikely. that anything. The only one risk is Ovechkin, and he's probably going to play it out. And so with all that flexibility, and it's just the one overpay on Backstrom, I'd say. So really good. Just the Backstrom contract is the only problem I would have with it. And I just don't think they're quite a Stanley Cup team. They could do it, they could pull it off, but just not quite. So yeah, A- for Washington. Next up is the Islanders, which I'm very high on the Islanders. And having looked at their contracts, I believe everything's going to be very good here. But in any case, cap hit 78.716 million, 3.784 million cap space. So still a bit of money to spend. Lou Lamoriello is the GM. And then so the forwards, we've got Barzal, 7 million last year on a 3-year contract. And then he extended for 8 years, 9.15 per. And then so last year, 59 points in 73 games, 45 and 55, 60 in 68, 62 and 82. So approximately a point per game player. Looks like has been really good in the playoffs. Excellent pedigree, first round pick. A stud of a player. Now, his stats aren't that great. I mean, they are good, but at 915, excuse me, it expires when he's 34, I believe. So 9.15 in his prime years. The tough thing is his first full season, he had 85 points, 22 goals in 82 games. So if that's his performance for the majority of that time, then I would say 9.15 is reasonable. The problem is that he hasn't been there recently. So it seems like it's for that dollar figure a bit of a, I mean, not a gamble, but it's a bit risky to spend that much with not that great. I mean, good performance, but not up to that value, I would say. So, but it's his prime years. You would hope that he trends upwards, given his pedigree, given some of his performance before. So, I would have tried to get him for less, but they had him at 7 million before, so maybe they're slightly paying more to compensate for the lower contract before. So it's tough. It's close enough, and it's obviously worth his market value, but I would have tried to shave off a bit. Maybe 8 something would have been like 8.7, 8, something under 9 is what I would have aimed for. So it's not bad, but slightly high for me. Next up, Anders Lee, 7 million per 4 years remaining on a 7-year contract. 46 points, 28 goals in 76 games, 19 points in 27, 43, 20 goals in 68, 51, 28 goals in 82. Somewhere around a 25 goal scorer, it looks like, and under a point per game. Was signed in 2019 after a stretch of really good years. So his best year is 40 goals, 62 points in 82 games. Like that's a lot. Uh, and his next year is not that far off either. So, 6th-round pick, not that great a pedigree. So it's a track record that's going to give you the contract, and 7 million per. So at the time of the contract, great. He's kind of slipped as of late, but so far this year it's good. Last year wasn't so bad from a goal standpoint, but a point standpoint, not as good. So anyway, so I'd say good contract. He's the captain, so a leader on the team. Um, yeah, I'd say probably just right. Maybe slightly high, but not by much. So I'd say that's a good contract. Next up, Brock Nel. Yeah, Brock Nelson, 6 million per, 3 years remaining on a 6-year contract. Last year, 59 points, 37 goals in 72 games, 33 points in 56, 54 points with 26 goals in 68, 53 points, 25 goals in 82. So somewhere around a 25 goal scorer. Was signed in 2019 after pretty consistent, kind of a half a point per game, 25 goals a year. So decent performer. Signed after decent years. Good pedigree, 1st-round pick. Played World Junior. I mean, 6 million's good value for the goals you're getting. So, and enough of a track record and enough pedigree to do that at the time. So I'd say that's a good contract. Next up, Josh Bailey, 5 million per, 2 years remaining, 6-year contract. Last year, 44 points, 74 games, 35 and 54, 43 and 68, 56 and 82. So under a point per game. Reasonable performance. Was signed in 2018. Halfway in his best year. Good timing to sign the contract after a decent year before, and then some pretty decent years otherwise. So was signed for 6 years. So the timing was great. And that's how they got the 5 million. So 5 million for him is great. That's a great contract. Really good timing. Kind of lucky. Was a 1st-round pick, so good pedigree. I think they just got really lucky with the timing there. So I'd say great contract. If it was after that year where he got 71 points in 76 games, that would have been tough, but they're lucky. They got it right halfway through. So good contract. Great timing. Next up, Pajot, 5 million per, 4 years remaining on a 6-year contract. 39 points, 77 games, 28 points, 54, 40 in 60 with 24 goals. 42 in 67 with 26 goals, and then 12 points in 39 games. So somewhere around 20 goal scorer, under point per game. Was signed in 2020. Halfway through his best year. So again, lucky timing. That was signed by, yeah, the Islanders. Wow, really lucky timing. Because at 5 million, I mean that's a good value contract. So yeah, um, so I'd say great contract, good timing. His performance before wasn't that great though, so maybe an overpay. I guess we'll say, but not by much. Believe he's good two-way as a centerman. I know I've liked how he's played because I've watched a chunk of Islanders games, so I think he's a great player. It's just I don't know, maybe a bit steep at the time. Not bad, not good, decent contract, I guess in the end. Um, Palmieri, 5 million per 3 years remaining on a 4-year contract. Last year, 33 points in 69 games, 21 in 51, 45 with 25 goals in 65 games, 50 points, 27 goals in 74. So historically, a 25 goal scorer, under a point per game. So a scoring kind of player. Dipped a little bit last year, but missed some time with injury. So, anyways, was signed in 2021 after a mediocre year and previous years being really good. So, 5 million per 4 years, not that risky. Lots of flexibility, gets lots of goals. So, I mean, I'd say that's a great contract for 25 goals. 5 million is great. Um, yeah, and good pedigree. So, I mean, in all likelihood, he's going to be back to where he was. So, I'd say that's a great contract there. I believe that's it for forwards. So between 9 years with Barzal with the 1 year remaining on the current contract. And then otherwise between 2 and 4 years, their core. I mean, highest paid player this year is 7 million. Like, geez, that's really good cap management. 9.15 for Barzal after, I'd say is slightly expensive, but everybody else still the same price for, like I said, 2 to 4 years. Um, Man, so like lots of cap space still this year. Really, really, really good, I'd say, in forwards. Again, don't quite like the Barzal one. It's market value, but and it could turn out being really good because he's young and good. So, but in any case, really stellar management for forwards, I'd say, and super deep. Like, think so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6 forwards at 5 million to 7 million. That's like two lines at really low prices. And the rest 4 million, 2 million, 1 million, like super cheap. So man, that's stellar for the forwards, I'd say. Moving to defense, Ryan Pulak, 6.15 per 8 years remaining of an 8-year contract. So that was just signed. Last year, 21 points, 56 games, 17 and 56, 35 and 68, 37 and 82. So somewhere around a 30 some odd point defenseman. Logs a lot of minutes. Like I said, I watched them a decent amount. Good pedigree, first round pick. Yeah, so good defenseman. Signed in 2021 after his decent years. and then a mediocre year. So yeah, 6.15 I'd say is great for top defenseman. Maybe you'd hope that it's slightly less, but I mean it's pretty darn close. So I'd say that's a great contract. And locking up a guy 8 years with how he's performed, I'd say is great. So really good job. Probably going to be really good value at the end. So that's where 8 years at that dollar figure is smart. So I'd say a great contract. Adam Pellick and Pulak. I believe they play all the time together, so it's a funny combo. And yeah, I think they played together. Anyways, could have sworn from a broadcast I remember hearing them try to navigate saying those two names all the time. But anyways, so he makes 5.75 per 7 years remaining of an 8-year contract. Last year, 28.78 games, 14 and 56, 9 and 38, 21 and 78. So looks like around a 20-point defenseman. 5.75 per. Was signed in 2021 after some mediocre years for performance, at least. Now, this is where I don't know how. I think he might be a defensive defenseman. Was a third-round pick, so not the best pedigree either. Did play World Juniors. So, given his track record, contrast with the pedigree, it's tough. I'd say that's expensive. Probably more towards a $5 million defenseman, but again, I don't know the full details of his performance if he's good defensively, but still not enough performance, I'd say, to warrant that dollar figure. So, not the worst, not what I would do. 8 years, also not what I would do, unless it was at a lower dollar figure. Um, so I don't like that contract, but it's not the worst. Noah Dobson, 4 million per, 3 years remaining on a 3-year contract. Great pedigree, first round pick. Played World Juniors. Last year, 51 points, 80 games. Wow, really good. 14 and 46, and then 7 and 34. So hasn't played that long, but a good offensive defenseman. Great pedigree, projected to perform well. So, was signed in 2022 after his excellent year. 51 points. 51 points in 80 games. Managed to get him at 4 million. Like, holy jeez. The problem is that it's only 3 years. So, that's where it's tough. I don't know the justification for that, why they didn't go long term. That's tough. So, obviously great value, obviously great for flexibility. Problem is that somebody I would have locked up long term. So, I mean, would have been great. 8 million at 5, even 6 million. So I don't know. Not what I would have done, but obviously not a bad contract, just kind of risky. So yeah, so fine anyways. Then on defense, so that is, I believe, so the core is 3 to 8 years. So locked up pretty long term with good players. So I'd say perfectly fine. Maybe a slight overpay on Pellick, but you underpay on Dobson. So fine, I'd say. very good in the end. It's just not ideal for what I would want. Um, then in net, probably the best, in my opinion, the best tandem in the NHL. Varlamov at 5 million, 1 year remaining of a 4 year contract. Last year, 911 save percentage in 31 games, 929 in 36. Was a stud in the playoffs, 914, 45 games, 909 and 49. Like, what a killer track record of performance. Only had the one bad year, I think, in Colorado. So, stud goalie. Was signed in 2019 after back-to-back good years and an awesome track record before. So, geez, at only 5 million, it expires this year. He's 34. So that's where maybe you wanted to would have wanted like a 6 year contract at 5 million. I think he's a goalie you can win the cup with. He's had his weird moments in the playoffs, but in general, I think you could win a cup with him. So, I mean, 6 years would have probably been better. Expire when he's 36 at 5 million or less if you could have gotten less for a longer term. So, I mean, great contract. Just you'd want him locked up longer, I think, but that's just me. So great job there. And then 4 million for Ilya Sorokin, 2 years remaining on a 3 year contract. Came over from the KHL, was a stud in the KHL. I forget the full details. I wrote an article on him before. But I forget. I think he won the championship maybe a couple times, won the best goalie of the league a couple times, something like that. Just an absolute star over in Russia. Comes over, and so that kind of so I spoke previously. Although he didn't have the track record in like the NHL to sign him, I mean, it's the kind of guy I would have locked up long term. So, anyways, last year, 52 games, 925 on a team that didn't play that great. 925 save percentage. Jeez, what a stud of a goalie. 918 in 22 games the year before. 922 in the playoffs that year. Jeez, what a goalie. So anyways, was signed 2021 at the start of the year for 3 years. I don't know why they didn't lock him up long term. For me, it would have been maybe it's because he doesn't want to play in the NHL that long, or he's unsure if he's going to, because it took a while for him to get over to the NHL. So maybe that's the issue. I don't know. But I mean, the kind of guy you would lock up for 8 years at whatever 5 million if you needed to. I mean, he got 4 million. So you could have maybe gotten 8 years at 4 million or something. I don't know. There's something that doesn't fit here of why it's only 3 years. Because he played well in one full season. Wait, give me a second here. So it was signed before the full season, but after playing a bit. So wait. Bear with me here. September before. So it was after the 1 year with the playoffs okay. So anyways, so maybe that's what it is because it was only 1 year. Didn't play that much, 22 games, and then the playoffs, yeah, 7 games, and played well. But so in any case, I still would have done long terms, but maybe that's the hesitation. 4 million. Maybe they're concerned about doing that much for longer. I don't know. So in the end, obviously, great contract, very flexible. just maybe a guy you would try to lock up long term because the KHL stats just were outstanding. So I don't know. Maybe they're just risk averse on that. I'd say it's fair to be potentially, but anyways. So yeah, altogether, I mean, what a roster, in my opinion. So they had a bad year last year. Maybe some people don't like them. They're not as high on them as I am. I picked them to be in the finals against Edmonton, so I'm have a strong positive opinion for them. Tough division. Anyways, so I'd say, in my opinion, a fantastic team, cap space, great cap management. Just it's the Pelech contract maybe I don't like, and then Barzal moving forward. So for this year, it's fantastic. For this year, it's an A plus or an A. Next year, moving forward, maybe not. So what I'll say is, uh, 'cause if they're not good this year, then I'm gonna regret saying it because my instinct was to say A, and then it could be A minus if they don't pan out being as good as I think they're gonna be. We'll say A. There's not much I would change, just slight tweaks. Barzal under 9 million, and then Pelech more towards 5 or under 5 million, but 5 million would be good. So maybe I'm being overly picky because I like the team. So we'll say an A for the Islanders. Next up is the last one, which is the Rangers. They are at the cap basically exactly 82.326. GM is Chris Drury. Starting with the forwards, Panarin 11.643 per 4 years remaining on a 7-year contract. Last year, 96 points, 22 goals in 75 games, 58 points, 42 games, 95 points with 32 goals in 69 games, 87 points, 28 goals in 79 games. So around a 30 goal scorer, over a point per game. So that's really good performance. Was signed in 2019 after 4 straight really good years of basically 30 goals and over a point per game. So in my opinion, maybe slightly steep. So this is where it's like I've said previously, the only people I'd be paying over 10 million is maybe McDavid, Draisaitl, maybe a couple other guys, but otherwise I'd be aiming for under 10. So in this case, Panarin, obviously worth in the market his value, but I would have been trying to get 9.5 or something like that for him. So yeah, obviously worth his contract, just slightly expensive for me because you need to be able to round out your roster with good players. So that 2 million that you would have saved really makes a difference across all the players. So anyways, so perfectly fine contract, but not to my taste. Sabinazed, 8.5 per, 8 years remaining on an 8-year contract. Last year, 81 points, 29 goals in 81 games, 50 points, 24 goals in 56, 75, 41 goals in 57, 74, 30 goals in 82. So basically, ballpark a 25 to 30 goal scorer, point per game, stud of a player. Was signed in 2021 before the year. So it would have been after some of his best years, basically. And his playoff last year was fantastic. But anyways, 8.5. See, like it's basically the same performance as Aaron, and he's getting paid what he should be getting paid. Good value, 8.5. But Panarin, 11.6. So $3 million difference, similar performance. So it's like, how do you justify it with Panarin? So this is a great contract, fantastic, 100%, really well done, and it's a perfect contrast with the Panarin contract. So Zibanejad, it's a great job there. So, anyways, combined between the two, they get to the 9 million range, or 9.5. So it's close enough between the two of them. It's just, preferably you'd want both, because then that's 3 million between two, 6 million in total. A $6 million player you could have if both were at a good price. So, anyways, Chris Kreider, 6.5 per 5 years remaining on a 7-year contract. Last year, 77 points, 52 goals in 81 games, 30 points, 20 goals in 50, 45, 20 goals in 63, 52, 28 goals in 79. So consistently 25 to 28 goals a year. Last year was crazy. I think that's an anomaly. I don't think he'll get to that this year or ever again, but you never know. So was signed in 2020, middle of the year, after pretty consistent 20 goal scorer. So 6.5, 20 some odd goals, like 25 goals. I'd say that's pretty good. Maybe, slightly higher than I would want to, but definitely market value, on the cheaper side of market value. So I'd say great. And last year they got so good value out of that. So, anyways, yeah, and it expires when he is 36. So perfectly on time, good value. I'd say great contract there. Vincent Trocheck, 5.625 per 7 years, remaining on a 7-year contract. Last year, 51 points, 21 goals in 81 games, 43 points in 47 games, 38 in 62, and 34 in 55. And he was just signed. He's been kind of up and down. So previously was a 25 goal scorer approximately, dipped. Also some injuries there. And then last year was back up to normal. So, and decent in the playoffs too. So, so if he's a 20 goal scorer and under a point per game, 5.625 is, I'd say, reasonable. Played World Juniors, decent pedigree. 3rd round pick, but still World Junior player. Yeah. So I'd say maybe, yeah, no, that's about right, I'd say. I mean, to be honest, I'd only want to shave off 1,000 or sorry, 100,000 or a couple 100,000. So close enough. Very good contract, I think. All right, and that's it for forwards. So the core is between 5 and 8 years, basically, and then the rest are just 1 year left. So, I mean, if you believe in that core, Panarin, Zibanejad, Kreider, Trocheck, and then Goudreau, but or Goodrow. Sorry, not Goudreau, but anyways, Goodrow. With that core to have locked up, I mean, if that's what you think is going to win, I mean, it's not bad. I think they overperformed last year. I think it's good coaching and good goaltending that saved them. I think they're going to be closer to missing the playoffs this year. Uh, so, anyways, so it's not a bad core, not perfect. I'd say it's fine. Flexibility is not there, but that's because you basically that is the core, is what they're saying. That's who we're going to win with. So, do I think that's good enough to win the cup? I don't think so. I think it's just shy. I think they're competitive, and they could probably consistently compete to get a couple rounds deep, but to win a cup, I don't think so. They could, though, but it's close. So, anyways, I don't like the core. I think it's good management nonetheless. So, anyways, there's a balance there. So, moving to defense, Adam Fox, 9.5 per, 7 years remaining on a 7-year contract. Last year, 74 points in 78 games, 47 in 55, 42 in 70. So last year was great. 23 points in 20 games in the playoffs. Stellar. Was signed in the middle of the year to an extension. So, man, after 2 years of 40 points, well, with the shortened COVID year, I mean, great pedigree. Was a third round pick, but still nonetheless good pedigree. Played World Junior. And I know he was good in college too. So I don't know. Halfway into a good year and you sign him for 9.5, you'd have to think that he's going to be a point per game defenseman to do that. Jeez. That expires when he is 31. So I'd say it's probably going to pan out. He's probably going to be similar performance to Makar, probably worth the 9.5. I would have been concerned that maybe he wouldn't pan out that well. I would have tried to do long term, but not at that much. So it's not a bad contract, but I would say too much of a dollar figure with the track record for me to be confident. Next up, Trouba, $8 million per, 4 years remaining on a 7-year contract. 39 points, 81 games, 12 in 38, 27 in 70, 50 in 82. So really good in Winnipeg, especially that 1 year. The rest were kind of decent years. Was signed in 2019 after his best year at $8 million for 7 years. I mean, great pedigree, first round pick, wanted to be in New York. Just after one good year is the problem. I mean, he played important minutes because I'm a Jets fan. They're my team, and I watched a lot of his hockey. and in a mixed point production shutdown role kind of thing, really important minutes, and he played well. Just 8 million for the performance. Excuse me. Um, I wouldn't have done it. I mean, 6 million um, is probably something I would have aimed for. 8 million's a bit steep. If you think he's going to continue that performance, then it's good value at eight. I mean, market value at 8 million. Uh, Still expensive for me, even if he's at 50 points in 82 games. Um, so I don't like the contract. It's market value though, so it's not bad. And that's it for defense. So the core is between 4 and 7 years, and it's just the two of them. The rest are 1 to 2 years. So I mean, decent team on D. I don't know. Too much on the defenseman, that's a problem, and not enough on the forwards. So I think that's going to be their problem is if they can play great defensively, they've got a great coach, great goalie, and decent enough team to play a defensive style. But that's the problem is they can't produce enough to be a Stanley Cup team, in my opinion. So, and last up, Shesterkin doesn't really require much talk, but 935 in 53 games, 916 in 35. Those are his only real years, and then the playoffs last year. So he was signed. 5.667 per 3 years remaining on a 4-year contract. Was signed in before the season 2021. So after a short season and a not that much playing time season, 5.667. Jeez. So it's fine dollar figure and term. I guess it's one of those test and see. So it's one of those goalies. I mean, played in the KHL. See, I wasn't aware of that. Yeah, so he was a good KHL goalie too, kind of like Sorokin. So, um, yeah. So enough of a track record, I guess, to justify the dollar figure and term. Yeah, I guess it's one of those you want to see how he's going to pan out. So it's not bad. Problem is that if he maintains this performance to sign him, he's going to be really expensive probably at the end. So, but anyways, all things considered, fine. So great contract in the end. So to summarize, they're not flexible at the high end prices. So they've committed to their core. Is the core, like I said, is the core good enough to win a Stanley Cup? I don't think so. I think they're just shy. Good enough to compete, to go deep, but not, I don't think, a Stanley Cup team. So I would say it was a good attempt. Sorry. And I mean, maybe uh, I'm naive to like maybe I couldn't have done better or whatever, but uh, I think it was a good attempt, but I don't think it's going to be good enough to win a Stanley Cup. So for that reason, I can't give them an A. I'd say as a franchise, you're going to keep competing. You probably should make the playoffs or be close every year. You can probably go deep with as long as you keep a good coach, and so I mean, we'll say B plus. The franchise is going to have good value, but it's just the problem is that they're not going to. I don't think they'll win a Stanley Cups with this roster. So, um, B plus, and I'm reluctant to say that because I just the fact that I don't think they can win a Stanley Cup and they're locked up too much. So it's kind of too bad in the end. But anyways, so we'll say B plus for the Rangers. So that ends it for the Metropolitan and for this podcast. And I've been kind of on an angle, I guess, for a chunk of the time. Anyways, so if you like this, I hope you did. Hit the like button, share with your friends, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you can be advised of my streams. Should be daily 5 p.m. Eastern, changing to 4 p.m. after the time change. Should be that schedule, but that's subject to change just with other things because it's just a hobby. So, anyways, so yeah, if you like this, tune in again tomorrow, and we'll be covering the last division, which is the Atlantic Division, the first half, and yeah, 2 more of this series, and then we'll wrap it up. So, thanks for tuning in, and have yourself a good one.